What was your emotion or your thought when you got the knife and took it outside? What precipitated that maybe not clear decision, but that action of taking a knife?
I think that was just pure panic, especially once I realized what they've done to him in the basement, as far as they took it. It was a panic of, I'm going to jail. I'm involved with the beating. I may not have done what they did in the basement, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I was there. So the panic, just wasn't thinking, just panic, get rid of them, and hopefully get away. But as soon as I got there, I couldn't do it. It was just I've never done that before. I was scared, and I couldn't do it.
I was scared. I couldn't do it. Here he is 27 years later after being convicted of murder, of stabbing his victim. He tells the parole board, nope, I didn't do it. I was only sentenced to life because I was there. Now, we happen to have covered his co-defendant's parole hearing. I'll leave a link to that in the description. Now, his co-defendant was the ringleader, and I would say even a bigger monster, because he used a broomstick to do the unthinkable to this poor victim. But now, here we are at this Minnesota parole hearing, his first chance at parole after spending 27 years in prison. And he tells the parole board the one thing you just shouldn't do, which is, I didn't do it. And we'll go over the appeal at the end. And with that, let's jump in.
Our records indicate that on January 31st of 1998 in the city of St. Paul, Minnesota, Ramsey County, police officers discovered the body of Joshua Christensen in his car. He appeared to have been beaten severely and stabbed in several locations. His head had been partially covered in masking tape, and there were stab wounds to his abdomen and neck. Witnesses reported that Christensen was last seen at a house party in St. Paul in the company of Alex Tovar and several other men. They reported that Christensen had incurred some drug debt and that he was instructed to distribute drugs to pay off the debt. Alex Tovar was sent with to ensure that he did as he was instructed. Witnesses at the party indicate that an argument ensued between Tovar and Christensen and that they went to the backyard of the property. A short time later, Tovar returned to the house with Christensen in a headlock, and tape had been placed around the eyes and nose of Christensen. Several individuals, including Tovar, began to punch and kick him. He was again taken away from the house. A witness stated that Tovar left the kitchen with a large knife and later returned saying, "It's done." On February 2nd of 1999, Alex Tovar was sentenced to life imprisonment in Ramsey County District Court after having been found guilty of the offense of first-degree murder. Today's review by the board represents Mr. Tovar's initial review after serving approximately 27 years of incarceration. His minimum parole eligibility date on his life sentence will occur on April 7th of 2028. Thank you. I turn this matter over to the board.
Good morning, Mr. Tovar. How are you today?
Nervous.
Okay. Hopefully you'll calm down a little bit as we get into this conversation. But I'd like to start by asking you to describe or talk a little bit about what it is you'd like to see happen as a result of today's meeting.
Well, I think first and foremost, I would hope to gain you guys' trust and belief that if I can continue on with my step down program, that I will, continue to be who I am today. I'm not the person that I was 27 years ago. I've changed drastically. And I just hope to gain your trust and see that through my actions, through what I've done, through, what maybe people have said about me, they can attest to this. And I just you know, just really hope that you could put the belief in me that if you move me forward, that that I'll continue on with my program and everything I've done this far. It wouldn't just stop now. It'll be who I am now as a person.
So, I appreciate that, and I just want to state that I look through and you've done many positive things in the course of your time. One of the things you wrote in your letter was that today you're in a position where you can better face the hard truth, or you've learned to confront the hard truth. What is the hard truth?
Well, I used to be, I looked at myself as being very selfish back then. That I used to, when I first got incarcerated, I used to blame it on friends that I hung around with drugs, with drinking, and it just wasn't the truth. The truth of the matter was that I've made my own decisions, that regardless of what drugs or alcohol or friends I was, I alone made my decisions to live the life that I did. So once I had to confront myself with that, that's when I started learning how to take accountability and responsibility for all my actions that I've ever committed. And that's when I started realizing that it's me who I got to work on, not the friends or leaving the drugs alone. It's me who I got to realize that I'm the one who makes the decisions in my life, that I got to change who I was as a person, that I got to become someone better. And in order to do that, I had to look inside myself and start changing who I was. And from then on, I started programming, got into everything I could, and just changed my thought process of, and biggest step was being accountable, holding myself accountable, and being responsible for everything I've done and do today. So that's what I meant by, learning the hard truth. That it wasn't no one around me. It was me, myself, that I had to work on the most.
And I appreciate and respect that insight. One of the questions I have is, and I know that you've certainly talked about this with others as well, but the variation that exists in terms of what you were convicted of and found guilty of, and the account that you talk about what happened. Can you illuminate kind of like what you did and what you didn't do? Now, I realize that you accept responsibility and accountability based on the fact that you connected Joshua and others, but I'm trying to get a sense of like what actually happened and what your role was in this.
Well, I did bring Joshua Christensen to that house party that day. I was helping him out, trying to figure out how to get this money for the drug debt. We ended up at a party. We ended up drinking. Now the party turned into, started off as a fight that turned into what it was today, or what had happened that day, that night. But there's accounts in there that was said that I did, that I actually didn't do. But that's always been a hard question for me because I never wanted to take away anything that looks like I'm not taking accountability for my actions or being responsible for anything I've done. If I know what's on paper. I know it says that I was in the backyard and I brought him in taped up, and that just simply wasn't the case. I wasn't the one that did it. I was inside when they did bring him in. I did start, punching on him and kicking on him. But the initial the initial part of it wasn't me, wasn't my doing. I wasn't the one that brought him in taped up. And I know, I've gotten this question several times, and it's always hard for me because, it's, I don't ever want to see like I'm not taking responsibility or accountability for my actions. I can only be responsible for every action that I did that night, and I'm responsible for that, and I take full accountability for that. It's been 27 years at this point. I wouldn't, deny anything or say I didn't do something when that's, when it's not the truth. I've done the time. I've been locked up for it, but it's just, you know, I guess it could be easier for me to say, yes, I did tape them up and bring them in. But if you guys start asking me specifics about it, I wouldn't be able to answer them because I don't know exactly what happened when that. So it's always been rough for me to figure out how to tell you guys, my role and what I did. And the fact is, I did beat him up. I did hit him. I did kick him once he was inside the house. But I was not down in the basement with him when occurred to him down there. I was never down there. And I wasn't the one that brought him in the house to begin with. But everything else that happened, I did, was me. And I take full responsibility for that.
Okay, so I appreciate this. Again, I'm not asking you to take responsibility for things that you didn't do. That's the last thing I want to do. I just want to make sure that it's clear to me, like what you are responsible, what you are taking responsible for. I heard, and you talk about the fact that you connected, Joshua with the others who were involved in those sorts of things. But I'm hearing that you were involved in assaulting him. Were you involved in stabbing him?
No, I'm not gonna lie, I went out there with the intent and I just couldn't do it. I went out there to try to stab him. I panicked when I heard what happened in the basement and they took him outside. I grabbed a knife, came in, grabbed a knife, and went back out there. And once I got there, I just couldn't do it. And my co-defendant, he said, I left the knife with him. And, I really just couldn't do it. It just, I know it's hard to believe. I know I'm not saying I'm innocent. I would never say that I'm innocent at all. Like I say, I take full accountability for my actions. But it's just some parts that are hard for me to admit to, that when I know I really didn't do it.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I don't want you to do that. Again, I want to be really clear about that. There's a difference between not wanting people to take responsibility for things that they weren't a part of and being really clear about the things that you were a part of.
I just don't want this. And like I say, it's hard because I don't ever want you guys to look at me like I'm not taking accountability, and I don't want this to be held against me and think that I'm not ready, or I'm not, that I'm, just not taking accountability when it's not the case. Like I say, it could be.
No, and
I
want to be really clear. I'm not asking you I do not want you to accept responsibility. I'm more interested in the elements of what happened that you were involved in, right? Because I think that's the part that I had some confusion about. And I think and why I asked this, not because you haven't done the time, not because you haven't done well, but it is, I go back to the first question I asked around hard truth. And I just want to make sure that I'm clear about what that hard truth is, and it's a reflection of not accepting responsibility for things you didn't do, but for making sure that there's clarity about the things that you were involved in. Let me just ask, and I'll move forward, but the victim was placed in a car, right?
Yeah, correct.
Were you involved? Were you there when that was done?
Yes, I helped transport him from when they brought him up to the basement. They called my name, and that's when I turned and seen him, and they told me to help him carry him to the car.
Okay.
And that's when I brought him to the car, and they told me what they had did to him down there. And that's when I came in, grabbed a knife, came back out, and I just couldn't, I couldn't stab him. I just couldn't do it. I was planning to. I tried, but I just couldn't follow through with it. I just couldn't do it. I've never done that before and never have, and I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. And so somebody else did, and then you ultimately you assisted in putting him in the car.
Correct.
Okay. When you think about that night, because it sounds like you started out with this intent of like wanting to help him out of a jam, right?
Yes.
And at some place that changed, and yet he was somebody that you knew, that you had a connection with, right, prior.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
What was the dynamic at that party that changed, that allowed you to be involved in what happened here?
That, when we went to that party, it was all in the full intent of just having a good time. Like throughout the day, we went around looking for drugs to try to find to sell to make up for the money that he owed. We couldn't find what we were looking for. Our last stop was by this bar. We ran into some, who I consider friends of mine. He told us about a surprise party that they were having for another guy down the road if we wanted to go. So we went to the party with just full intentions of just having a good time, just drinking, having a good time. And, it started off as a fight that just got completely out of control. Now, the whole thing, what hurts the most is Josh was never supposed to get hurt that night. He was with me. Those people at the party had nothing to do with what happened or what the money that he owed. So for that to happen that night was just, totally out of control, totally wrong. It should have never happened. And that's what hurt the most. That every time I think about him, it just had I not, had I helped him instead of, hurt him, it would have been, different situation. But I've always, I don't know what I was thinking that night when I seen him bring him in, that I started hitting him and kicking him. I'm just, I've always been in a conflict with myself of why that happened, why I did that, why I betrayed him like that when he was trying to do the right thing, when he was trying to pay back a debt that he owed. And it just, like I said, it bringing him to that party was never meant for him to get hurt. It was just for us to have, rest the night, have a good time that night, and then start over the next day. And it never happened that way. It turned out the way it did.
Why do you have a sense of why you think I might ask that question? And how it's, because that was obviously 27 plus years ago. What may be the relevance in that today? Why would any sense of why I might ask that question?
The only thing I could think of is how I teach these guys now today. I do I know I told you I facilitate thinking for change. And one of the things we do in there is teach these guys how to stop and think. So, back then I didn't know what I've learned today. Today I learned how to stop and think, before I react. Because most of our reactions come from our emotions. And most of the time, you know, 90% of the time, 99% of our time, our emotions are anger when we get into a certain situation. When you react to that emotion, it usually doesn't turn out good. Your
Mhm.
your actions are going to come with the worst consequences, no matter what the situation may be. And how I tell these guys now is to stop and think and realize what your emotion is that you're feeling at that time, and how to spot that. Whether it be, like, say, for instance, you're feeling anger, a lot of people might feel tense, their jaws might lock up, your fist might ball up, you might start getting, red in the face or feel yourself, getting heated. So by recognizing your warning signs, you know what comes after that. So if you can recognize your warning signs, you can know to slow down your thinking and stop before you make the wrong decision. So I'm thinking, now I wouldn't it had should I find myself in any situation like that, I've learned to stop and think and recognize my emotions that I'm going through at the time and how to diffuse it. Some people just need you just once you recognize your sign, you can take space, whether it just be closing your eyes, taking you away from the situation. Some might need physical space as far as walking away and moving away from the situation. So by learning all this, I've learned how to better make better decisions and better judgment throughout my time incarcerated.
Yeah.
I've been in situations where it could have been slightly arguments over the phones with people cutting in line, double dialing, whatever it may be. But by learning these steps, I've learned to walk away before I even, you know, get into that argument. When I teach these guys here, it may be, we take them back to the unit, have them bring out a real situation. Then they come back to class and explain the situation, and then they role play it for us. Now the whole homework might take 15 minutes to do, the role play may take another 15 minutes to do. That's 30 minutes. But when you learn this every day, when you end up in a real life situation, your brain is programmed to compute this in milliseconds. And I tell them, I say, you ain't got to do this process. Your brain will do it for you once you learn it. And the next thing you know, you're walking away from a situation that could have been bad when your brain already has been trained to think a different way. So all the training I've been doing has been helping me think this way. And I've been doing this for a long time. I'm not saying thinking for a change or anything is a cure to everything. I've been doing this for 13 years. So I've been training my mind for a long time to think this way. And this is how I see everything now. And I try teaching guys this. I try letting them know, just because it seems repetitive, it's for the best. It's what's training your mind to think a certain way, not to be that person you were today or before, but to be a different person today. Just keep learning the process. And that's what I've been doing. I've been learning to think different and just control my reactions and my thoughts of just, doing the positive thing, doing the right thing, not going off my emotions anymore and reacting before thinking. So that's our main thing is stop and think when we talk
Yeah.
about.
So let me because to what extent were you influenced at this in this particular incident, this life sentence crime itself, by the others who ultimately became co-defendants? Was because obviously at some point in time there was Josh, who you knew, and then there was the influence of these others. And it seems like at some point in time, the influence of others became powerful. Is that fair?
Yes, is I guess the way I seen it is, Josh was like an associate And then the other ones I consider like friends, supposedly friends at the time that I was hanging around with every day, that I seen every day, that I know what they were capable of. So when it comes to picking a side, I was always going to that side because I know, or I consider them to be my friends and I know what they could do as opposed to going against them. It was always easier to go with them than against them, I guess you could say. And in that instance, it was, I guess, more cowardice to go with them than to try to hold them back from Josh, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's helpful. And so, as you think about the way you've lived, how have over the course of your time during incarceration have you seen that transition from, who does Alex Tovar get influenced by, and that kind of stuff? As you think about the 27 years, how did that change over time?
The first time that changed for me was in 2013 when I left Oak Park and got transferred to Stillwater. I got into restorative. The first program I got into was restorative justice. And once I got into restorative justice, they started explaining what restorative justice meant and what it does for people in the community. And I got into it. But what really changed my mind is when they had restorative justice had a speak, people from the streets come in, it was a victim impact week. So we had families from the outside come in and speak about, similar crimes that happened to their families who were victims of it and how they felt towards us, how, the hatred they felt for us at first, how, and then after over time, how they changed their mind and they come and give their time up to speak to us about their side of the feelings, how they feel, how they were hurt, how they were impacted by the crime. Because when I first came in, I just thought about myself, me, my family. I never thought about Josh's family, the community, anybody else that it affected. Restorative Justice showed me about how the ripple effect affects everybody around them. And that's when I started learning. And when I heard the families speak, how they can forgive us and come and try to teach us and let us know how their crime impacted their life and their family, that's what made a big change in me. Knowing that there is people out there that even after all this, they can learn to forgive you. I'm not saying I want Josh's family to forgive me. They can feel they're entitled to their feelings, but I know there's families out there that do, start looking at you different and not hold it against you all the time. And that's when I started realizing that, you know what, I got to change my ways. If these people are willing to accept me as I am, even though after doing my crime, I said, who am I? Who would I be to not start changing as a person and start giving back to these people or anybody I could? So restorative justice was the foundation for me. And from there, I moved on, to the Hope group. I started facilitating the Hope group. I did everything that involved restorative justice. I became and am a member of council, a restorative justice council. So I'm involved in, picking the VSOs, uh, participating with the fundraisers, doing projects to give, all this to give back to the community, give back to everybody that I can.
So,
because
I'm sorry. Because one of the things I know is that you have been really heavily involved. I just want to get to just a couple of quick points here. One, how do you think that Josh's family was impacted? In what ways?
Well, by first of all, taking away her son, their son, their brother, taking away his future, whether he might have had kids in the future, a wife, a life, anything that could happen, impact, you know, his younger brothers, his siblings, his parents, his sisters, whoever it may, I realized that it's just not it wasn't just Josh. It was people in his family that are impacted because they're the survivors. They're the ones that's feeling this the most. So realizing how I hurt them, how they must be feeling, that's what made me realize that, everything I've done to this point, it has to change. I can't be that person no more. I can't continue to hurt people in any kind of way, whether it be small or as big as I had done that night, which would have
So
been
how,
just,
what is the biggest change that you've made? What's
I think
the biggest difference about Alex Tovar today?
I think it was hard for me to grasp this. It's when I used to talk to therapists and everything, they told me that the first thing I had to do was learn to forgive myself. They said, and I didn't understand what they meant. But they said, if you learn to forgive yourself, then you can learn to love yourself. Once you learn to love yourself, then you can learn to love other people around you. Because I was always bitter, but once I realized what they meant was just forgiving yourself for committing the crime that you did and moving forward. You can't change what you did in the past, and nor would I ever say, I wish I could take this back, because I'm pretty sure they think the same thing. But what I could do is change the person I was in the past to the person I am to today. So that's when the transformation began of me trying to become a better person and becoming the best version of myself that I can. And I think, I've been working on that for a long time. I'm not saying I'm the best person that there is out there, but I'm definitely a better version of myself than I've ever been in my life.
So
I
related
think,
to that, just related to that, what is the work that Alex Tovar needs to continue to give focus to? Because we all do, right? We all have our
Right.
things. So what is it for you?
for me, it's to continue on doing what I'm doing now, which is I try giving back as much as I can. I help out. I've been SUD treatment mentor. I've been an SLS mentor. I'm a living aid now. So I do everything I can to help and give back. Help out anybody I can who needs help. I facilitate thinking for a change. I try to teach these guys new ways of thinking and try to pound it into their minds that this is the way that they got to start thinking now. So I think for me, it's to continue the programming that I've been doing, no matter where I'm at, and not to stop. If I were to be able to move forward, doesn't mean that my programming stops. Should I be able to have an opportunity to move the minimum, my program will continue. Should I be out in the world one day, programming will continue. As far as being involved with restorative justice out there, being a part of groups that, lifer groups out there where I can communicate with other lifers of how they succeeded, how they stayed out so far. I graduated PFA, I did PFA, graduated PFA. Them guys said they'll help me, on the spiritual aspect of side, plus any other ways that they can. So I think just continuing on as I'm doing, helping myself grow as an individual. Because that's all I could do is just keep growing and growing. I want to make sure that I give myself the best chance to succeed should I ever have a chance to come back out to society. Because
Thank you.
I want.
Thank you for that. I'm going to just to quickly turn to your mom here, and then we'll open it up for everyone to just ask questions of both. Thank you so much for being here, ma'am. I just want to open the floor to you just to share your thoughts with the board in terms of the change you've seen in Alex over time and what you think, where you think he sits today.
Yes, like he said at the beginning, he was bitter. You could tell it in his voice every time we talked to him, and angry all the time. But now it's different, completely different person. He's always nice or laughing. Everything just completely different, and he's grown up a lot and matured. And he's not selfish. At the beginning, we could tell it in his voice that we weren't there for him when he called or something. He was angry. Now he understands. Now he knows what we went through too. Not only did it affect him, but it affected the whole family. This is a first for our family that what happened. And yes, we were unbelievable. We couldn't believe what we were going through and what that their family was going through. So it was really, really hard for us. But now he's done a lot. He's changed. All his programs have helped him, and we can see that. We can hear it in his voice. It's just he's really matured and grown up, and I'm hoping that he continues like that once he's out, and hopefully he is. You grant him that. But yes, I see a big change on him, and he's just to me a good son.
Thank you so much, and thanks for being here. With that, I just open the floor to the board to ask any questions of Mr. Tovar or his mom others may have.
I'd like to ask Mr. Tovar a question.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Go.
Mr. Tovar, what was your emotion or your thought when you got the knife and took it outside? What precipitated that maybe not clear decision, but that action of taking a knife?
I think that was just pure panic, especially once I realized what they've done to him in the basement, as far as they took it. It was a panic of, I'm going to jail. I'm involved with the beating. I may not have done what they did in the basement, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I was there. So the panic, just wasn't thinking, just panic, get rid of them, and hopefully get away. But as soon as I got there, I couldn't do it. It was just I've never done that before. I was scared, and I couldn't do it. So I think pure panic was my first reaction. I just panicked. I didn't even think at the time. Yes, it was just, I can't even tell you. It was like a blank.
Was the goal of this group to kill the victim?
No, that was the whole thing. Is that these people didn't even know him. That this was just a party that we went to. I had no idea of what he had gone through earlier that day. Had no idea that he owed money. It was to totally different people that he owed money to. So this party was just supposed to be just to have fun, just to drink. And
What was the goal of beating him initially?
it was just when they started, they came in, they was drunk, got into a fight. The argument, why it started in the beginning, I have no idea. I could never get a real answer from them when they told me why they started it. But the reason I jumped in was just, I guess I've always been more of a follower than a leader. And thinking that these were my friends, I joined in with them, not thinking of the betrayal I was doing to Josh at the time, knowing that I was the one that brought him there. So it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't intent. It wasn't the intent. He wasn't brought there for that reason. But ultimately, it ended up with his death.
Did you realize at the time that he was left in the car bleeding, that he would die? Was that the goal?
No, I didn't even know. When I went back out there, they were gone. Everybody was gone. So I was at the house by myself with the owner. I didn't know where everybody left to. I passed out on the chair, and then about 30 minutes to an hour later, I was woken up by the guys and said, "Let's go." I got in the car and they left. Josh's car was no longer there, nor was Josh. So I had no idea what had happened at the time or what they did with him. and I didn't know he was still alive, bleeding out to death. But no, I did not. That was not the goal, and I did not know that that was the result until afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Tovar, I have a comment and a question. I really appreciate all you've learned about yourself and how you've made use of so much of your time in prison. It's a very controlled environment, as you know, and you've done lots of programming, which you've told us about, and I can really hear the voices of programming as you've been talking to us about what you've done while you're there. I'm really wondering how much thought you've given to the real world outside when all the programming and structure isn't in place. Like, how do you really think about that? What have you thought about it really specifically?
Like I really thought about how much the world has changed. You know, how can I function out there? How will I know where to go get certain things? How, you know, if I need to get housing, where can I get housing? If I needed to get a job, where do I look for a job? So all these factors came into play. And as I took in a lot of these groups, they helped me with that. Like I've done CBI Employ, which taught me that they got plenty of resources for me when I get out to help me with job employment. You know, I did the employee program. They can help me with jobs, with housing. You know, I've talked to people, and one of the main things I had to learn was humility. I had to humble myself and learn to get rid of my old core beliefs that I could do this on my own. You know, I always came in with a mentality like I could do this on my own. I don't need nobody. But that's not the case. I had to humble myself to realize that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to recognize what your resources are. Who are your resources? Who can help you out with certain situations? So that's when I learned that having a good network out there to help me with certain things will always be beneficial for me. So whether it be a therapist, if I'm feeling a certain type of way, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling lonely, knowing I can go see a therapist and talk with that therapist and let out my emotions. One of the main things I had to learn that I learned in treatment was how to let down my guard, how to be vulnerable, and knowing that vulnerability was useful to me, letting people know how I feel. And that's how I learned how to be humble and humble myself. So I think asking for help is the biggest thing for me, knowing that I don't have to, I know I can go out there and I don't have to do this alone. Think I have to do it alone. That there's no problem going asking for help, whether it be a resource center, a family member, a therapist, should I need it, or just speaking strictly with my PO and asking him or her questions about where should I go to find this, or if I'm having issue with this, you know. So it was a
Thank you.
lot.
I'm just wondering more about the people part of being outside of prison, because you're going to run into good people and bad people.
Oh
And
yes.
do you think you've become more of a leader than a follower? Like, how are you when you're out there and you're dealing with somebody and you can't say, hey, hold on, I want to go talk to my therapist? How is that going to look for you?
Like, should I end up in a situation? Well, I think what helps me is knowing that the people I have around me, that I've learned to get rid of all the negative influence and negative people that are not on a positive road. Like I've learned to embrace everybody that's, you know, the positive, like people that are on the same, I guess you say, trying to do good, trying to be on the same thing as me. I've like in here, I surround myself with people of positive peers, whether it be my peers or staff alike that can help me out, and they help me navigate through and staying positive. I've learned to let go of all that negativity and stay away from all negative influences. Like there's situations in here with guys that I've known for years might come around, but I'm quick if they're up to no good or they're still on their old ways. I'm quick to walk away from them. Like I have no problem letting go of my past no more. Letting
Thank you
go.
very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions from board members?
I did have a couple of questions for Mr. Tovar. And I've had a little bit of internet connection problems, so if this question has already been asked, I apologize. So I know that, was Josh Christensen your friend?
I used to that's what I considered him. I considered him more a friend than not, but and then I always question myself, that's a hard question because I didn't know his every secret. I didn't know what his plans were for the future, but I knew him enough to call him a friend. So and when I say it now, it hurts because of the way I know I end up, it ended that night. I betrayed him. And would a friend really betray a friend? So that was always a question. But yes, at the time, I always considered him a friend.
So, and part of the reason I asked the question is because you also categorized the group that was also involved in the assault as friends, and that's kind of where you joined in. So I'm just really trying to square that for myself. And I don't know if you've got any insight into that could kind of help me.
Well, I guess there was like different levels of friends. Like, a friend I consider as a friend is a friend. But I guess these are people that I was with more every day and I knew more. Josh came around occasionally, but I didn't see him as just an associate. I considered him a friend, but I guess not as close as with the other guys because I'm with them every day. If that makes any sense, like I guess two different type of friends, like in two different parts of life.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I appreciate that. My other question, it kind of goes along with that, and I know I think some of the other board members have asked you about this. So by your own acknowledgement, not only in our hearing today, but even in the comprehensive assessment, I think you had kind of categorized yourself as being someone who's impressionable and easily influenced by others. Like, so what are you going to do to ensure that you are not placed in a situation where you are easily influenced by someone who could lead you into trouble?
I learned to stay away from that part of my life. Like now, like I was saying earlier, I just surround myself with just positive peers and staff in here. And I would like to continue to do the same thing out in the world. I got plans on, I've talked to guys with like Dan Kane's Lifer Group, guys that work in restorative justice out there that will help me stay away from all this kind of trouble and put me back on what they're involved in and how they help the community. So being around them, it'll help me stay on a positive track as opposed to, I've been out of the streets for 27 years. I don't know these people no more. Like even if I was to see them, I wouldn't recognize them, nor would I go seeking them out. Even guys in here that I've met from the streets that came in, I don't even talk to them no more because that's just not who I am as an individual no more. So I know that I would never intentionally or purposely put myself in a position where I had to make that decision. So I think it's it'll be by the people I surround myself with. And that'll just be, people of positive influence. Like I said, I've changed a lot to the point that, I no longer want that part of my life. Like it hasn't been part of my life in here for so long. And we're such a tight knit community in here that it'd be so easy to fall back in it. So I think being out in the world, you're so far spread out between everybody that it'd be a lot easier to stay away from that kind of negative influence.
So it sounds as, or what I hear is that one of kind of the coping mechanisms would be to avoid that negative influence. If you encounter it though, do you feel you have the ability to call it out and address
Absolutely.
it that way?
Yeah, I think, like I say with like how we teach and thinking for a change, like I was saying earlier, it's helped me with my thinking a lot. So it helped me, like we put ourselves in situations here, just so we can role play them in thinking for a change. So it helps. It gave a big leverage on how to think about the situation, think of every outcome, think of every response that could come out of it, choose your best outcome and best response that'll help avoid any conflict. So yes, I think putting myself in a situation, finding myself in a situation out in the world, I think I would be able to handle it positive, where I could walk away from a situation as opposed to just feed off any negative emotion that may arise over it. Should they insult me in any way or something like that, that wouldn't bother me. So I think I'm in a position now from all the learning I've been doing to recognize when I'm in that position or I'm getting to that position to step away from it and be able to walk away. Like I had no problem walking away from a situation now as opposed to getting involved in something. If that answers your
Thank you.
question. Yeah.
Nope, it does. Thank you.
Mr. Tolver, I have one other question here. Just I have to go back and get some clarity, and I want to be clear about the fact that I'm asking this, and I know that this stuff is painful to talk about for you, and certainly for others who may have had your mom and people who are left behind as a result of the crime. But it's often said that the best way to deal with pain is all the way through it. And I want to go back to this account issue, and I know I've been on this. But part of this is really that demonstration of all the way through it. And I asked a question about, you had gone the knife, you couldn't do it. You ultimately gave the knife over or left it for one of your co-defendants to use. Then I asked about being involved in putting him in the car. And I thought your response was that you assisted with that.
Correct.
And okay, but then I heard your response to Ms. Earhart's questions. I thought I heard a different response, that you were asleep at that time. So what was it? What happened here?
No. I assisted with putting him in the car. I came in to grab the knife. I went back out to the car with the intent to stab him. I couldn't do it. I came back inside, and we were all inside. When I went back to go outside, everybody was gone. Like all the cars that were in the alley were gone.
Okay.
So when I came in, it was just me and the owner of the house that was left there, and I let him know that everybody's gone. So I sat on the couch and I passed out. And about 30 minutes to an hour later, I was woken up, and they told me, let's go. And they had came back. So
What did
no,
they say happened? What did they say happened?
they said they left the car at a park. They said they dropped them off at a park.
When you put him in the car, because you said you were involved in that, where was he put?
In the back seat.
Okay. All right. Any other board members have any other questions? Hearing none. Mr. Tovar, before the board moves into discussion and deliberation about next steps, I want to open the floor to you to make any final comments before we break.
No, I just hope that, that you guys just can see that. I know that's, like I said, that's the hardest question for me, is always talking about the crime. Just specifically because of the events. And I don't ever want you guys to think that I don't take accountability for my actions. I take full accountability. I just, it's hard for me to admit to something that I didn't do. And I don't want you to, at this point, it's easier for me to say, yes, I did that and I did that, after all this time. But it just, I think I could be only responsible for my actions and let you know what I did. Because I don't want it where you guys ask me certain questions and I can't answer. And then now it feels like I'm lying to you. So it was always a hard decision on how I wanted to answer your questions, be truthful or just go off of what's on the paper. But, that being said, I just want you to know that I'm not the person that I was 27 years ago. I've changed to the person I am today. And I think I'm a better version of myself than I've ever been. I've worked hard these last 13 years straight of programming to change my thought process and become who I am today. Should I ever be out in the world again, I would never find myself in a situation like this again, or ever put myself in a situation where I'd have to commit a crime of any kind. I'm in a place where I know I just strive to be positive and do everything right. And I'm just hoping that you guys can see that and put your trust in me to allow me to step down and continue on with my programming, my step down program. And just know that I will always be truthful to you guys and always be honest about who I am as a person.
Thank you for that. At this time, I'm going to close the discussion. During board discussion and deliberation, the board will not entertain any questions or allow interactions. And with that, I would open this to the board for discussion about next steps.
Well, I'd sort of like to see him. I feel like he's really institutionalized but I know he's got 3 years at least. Thank you. So I think it's probably not wise to say begin step down. I think makes more sense to maybe move to another medium to shake things up and then begin step down. So with that, I'd make a motion to deny parole, move to medium so he can work on budgeting and digital literacy and then come back maybe in 2 years or 18 months or something, so we can see how he's done and he can begin step down. That's my thinking.
So that was a motion. And just for clarity's sake, on the period of continuance, do you want to?
18 months.
Okay, the motion is 18 months. Is there a second to that motion? I'll second it for
second that
purposes.
motion.
Oh, okay. So we will.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
We'll have you, you can second. And other kinds of thoughts or discussions or things that people would like to see Mr. Tovar engaged in. Yeah, I do.
What?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, so one of the things that, and it may have been where kind of you were going with it, Commissioner, I certainly understand the kind of the predicament that he's described where, the board and myself certainly does not want to ask him to, accept responsibility for something that he claims he did not do, and that's not what I'm asking. There felt to me as though there's more opportunity, though, for maybe some deeper insight into, the role that he played that night, and maybe what could have been done to prevent it from escalating. It's one thing to turn away, but is there more opportunity for some deeper insight into kind of the role that unfortunately he did end up playing in the death of Mr. Christensen? That I'm looking for something more, and I don't know how necessarily to articulate that, but that's kind of where I'm at.
So I have some level of concern about that. And again, I want to be clear. The last thing I wanted to do is request that there is an acceptance of responsibility for something he didn't do as well. But I think there's a lack of clarity, and I think even in looking at the report that was done on the assessment. Well, again, I want to be clear that this does not clearly have significant bearing maybe on recidivistic behavior, but at the same time, I am concerned that the ability to give a clear, direct, concise accounting of his actions is not really there. And I think that was clear in the psych report, because he talked about the fact that he was not involved in the assault at that stage of the game. And I get it, and I appreciate his really direct honesty about the struggle of facing that. And yet I think that the insights around that are really facing that is something that is seems to me an important piece of the learning going forward, from the standpoint of how do you avoid situations like this in the future. And it's not that I believe that he's, but the things that I think, to your motion, that around institutionalization and having some opportunities to test different environments and some change, transition, and to continue demonstrating the kinds of leadership that he has would create some value. But I would really encourage him to work through with absolute crystal clear sense of clarity what it was that he was involved in, that he can fully accept a responsibility for, and be explicitly clear about that. And I think part of that is around, for me, and I can't speak to that, I'm talking about generally, that victims oftentimes want to just know. I imagine myself, if I was a victim of this crime, I would want to know what was the direct responsibility of the individual and their willingness or inability to accept that. So that's kind of where I sit.
I found his explanations to be implausible. I caught the inconsistency that you did, Commissioner, and I think that was a direct inconsistency. He also was part of a gang that he was able to step away from in prison in 2010, even though he'd been part of that Latin Kings group from the time he moved to Minnesota. I know that prison fellowship really pushes people to come true with what their involvement was. And I didn't hear anything very direct. He would skirt the issue and kind of talk around it, as if he had a hard time accepting his own role in this activity. And another thing that struck me is the argument, not knowing what the argument was about. It was apparent in the file that it had something to do with repaying drug debt, and yet he claims to have been clueless. And that, to me, is implausible. So I would not support 18 months for a review. Maybe 3 years, transfer to another medium facility and then have him come back. But I think a lot of self-examination, working with behavioral health, and trying to get his version straight so that he's consistent would be beneficial in my decision-making.
Other thoughts? We do have a motion and a second, and some sense of what that looks like. So for purposes of this, I think let's call the vote on the motion, which is a denial of parole, which technically really he is not eligible for another 3 years, but that would be really a continuance for 18 months with a move. And we've talked about some of the things that maybe could be included in a move, budgeting, digital literacy, continuing to demonstrate the skills that and leadership that he has started to really show at and teaching some of those programs, working with restorative justice on his accounting of what occurred, and remaining discipline free would be some of the things that I think would be included. To the motion, Board Member Bray,
Yes.
Board Member Earhart,
Yes.
Board Member Larson,
Yes.
Board Member Ramstead,
No.
and Schnell votes a yes. So with that, Mr. Tovar, what the process would look like here is that the team there would begin the process at Faribault of working with HRU and others to establish a plan for a move. And, ideally, we can look at what possibilities exist that would serve or advance some of your interest, whether that's some other, in addition to the things that the board would like to see, perhaps some type of vocational programming, those sorts of things. You come back in 18 months and you heard some of the discussion here and the things that, that we hope that you would continue to work on. I understand that it oftentimes when you think about what it is you'd like to see happen and it doesn't go exactly in that way, that it can be disappointing. I also want to just be really clear that that you have done a lot of work, and there has been marked and a demonstrable change. And the board's action today really is a reflection of recognition of that work, and yet a desire to see you continue in that effort and come back in 18 months and talk about where you're at. Any questions about that?
I guess the main issue you guys got is talking about the crime. So I guess I'm confused about, like, what would you rather I just say everything that was on paper and admit to that?
No, I
Because-
think, well, look, I don't want to argue this here. We'll send you a letter with this, and I'm happy to provide some clarity. I think loud and clear, nobody wants you to account for anything that you did not do. What we want is clarity about what you did do. That's it. And there has been some differences in accounts. That's it. And so to be able to walk through exactly what that looks like, what Alex Tovar's role was, not what you were convicted of. That's not what this is about. It's not adjudication. This is about a clear, straight, direct, honest accounting of what happened. That's it. Okay, so that's just one of the pieces. We will send you a letter that will document exactly what this is, and if you have questions, feel free to write back to me and Ms. Holmes Larson, and we will respond back and address any questions that you may have. Thank you very much. We wish you well.
No, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Our next week.
Okay, so they denied parole. He'll come back in, what was it, 22 months or something, and basically to give him another bite at the apple. And this is what they do in Minnesota, and I think that Minnesota actually does it quite well with the parole hearings. They have like a different type of system where they often will send you from maximum security to medium, then to light, then to work release, then to parole, and you go through these different processes. Now, I'll go through the information that Lady Holly found, and I want to again point out that we covered his co-defendant, and his co-defendant is the one that used a broomstick to SA the victim, and the co-defendant was the ringleader, was the one that really was the most the bloodthirsty and leading. I mean, he's the one who used the broomstick. This guy, by all accounts, didn't use the broomstick, but from what I saw in the previous unpacking, and I'll go through this, what Lady Holly found, he is the one who actually took a knife, actually like a cooking utensil, and started to stab him first, and got the others to stab him. And here he sits today at his parole hearing saying, no, it's just not true. I didn't do that. Yes, I helped bring him to the car, but it's not true. And what I don't understand with the Minnesota parole hearing process is, I don't understand. Parole hearing process is that I got a call. It just totally threw off my mind. And I have my phone on do not disturb, and I don't know why I'm getting calls if it's on do not disturb. So what I don't understand about this is like he's saying, no, I only want you to tell me the truth, but they're calling him out for not being, I guess, rehearsing his story. Like it wasn't as flush as they wanted to. Maybe they wanted him to say, well, this is what I did. I went here, I went there, I went there, and I did this and I did that. And they felt that there were some indiscrepancies. And I've watched it a few times, and I'm not sure if I picked up on the indiscrepancies, but basically said oh no, he didn't. No, I mean, it wasn't, I guess it wasn't, they weren't sure. But what I don't understand about what they're asking for is it's not true. He was found guilty in a court of law. There was like 7 co-defendants. Only 2 of them got life. So it's, and I'll add to this too, is I almost wish they would have asked this co-defendant, because this co-defendant's hearing came up 5 months after this one. And I wish that they were 4 months after, and I wish that they would have asked him, hey, did your co-defendant actually stab him? But anyways, I neither here nor there. It's still, his response. Okay, so I guess, like, what if he didn't stab him? What if he really didn't? Because again, what is in it for you to lie to the parole board? We have seen that there's one that we have. You come up to a parole hearing, and you tell the truth. And he even said it. He said, I don't. I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I didn't actually stab him. And I wonder if he didn't. I mean, who knows? Maybe because of all the different co-defendants, they just pointed fingers at him, and the district attorney got their conviction. But because he just felt, he's like, at the end, he's like, well, what do you want me to do? You want me to say I didn't do anything? I did something I didn't do? And it's like, well, yeah, probably you should have just said you did it, because you don't get anything by saying you didn't do it. I don't know. I actually don't know. This is tough. I don't know. It's certainly the parole board, he's institutionalized. I read about that. Look at all the research that Lady Holly does. It's just incredible. It's 8 pages that she drops in here with all the sources, all the links, all the information, the co-defendants. You can see here what each co-defendant got. This co-defendant got 36 months, this one 31 months, this one 48 months. And then 2 of them, and then another got life in prison. But let's go read it. There's a lot here. And again, I'll put the link in the description. It says co-defendants. Definitely the biggest monster in this story. On January 31st, 1998, St. Paul police discovered Christensen's body in the backseat of his car in a maroon Cadillac, which had been abandoned on Jessamine Avenue near Kent Street. Examination of the body reveals multiple stab wounds, 3 from a single-edged knife and others from a double-pointed instrument, as well as numerous others cuts and bruises, some of which a medical examiner described as defending or fending injuries. There was also packing tape on Christensen's head. The medical examiner also found indications that at one time Christensen's entire head and face had been covered with packing tape. Some of the bruising and lacerations were consistent with impact wounds, probably caused by striking a wall or a sharp table corner. Examination of Christensen's back area showed bruising and tearing, leading to the medical examiner to conclude that he had been essayed with a blunt object or possibly a stick. This is the co-defendant did that. The medical examiner determined the cause of death as exsanguination resulting in multiple stab wounds. I know I butchered that word. The lethal wound was a stab wound to Christensen's lower chest area caused by a single-edged knife that cut a vein in his liver. The medical examiner also found cat litter trapped in his clothing. Through interviews with Christensen's girlfriend as well as others, friends and associates, the police quickly entertained several key factors surrounding his death. Christensen was a 22-year-old small-time narcotics dealer who at the time of his death owed approximately $5,500 for narcotics he had purchased. The Malaves had been looking for Christensen for about a year, but were apparently unaware that he had been arrested approximately a year earlier for possession of narcotics and currently in court-ordered narcotics treatment program. The Malaves, the police told Christensen on Friday, January 3rd, 1998, Alex Torvar's residence in blah, 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 said that they were driving their van when they saw Christensen working on Christensen's car. He told police that they confronted Christensen about the money that they owed them and told him to pay or that they would take his car. Christensen instead offered to go out that night and raise the money by dealing narcotics. At some point during the conversation, Christensen and Tovar left the residence and drove to Cristobal's apartment in West Paul. He drove to rode in the van. Malaves, I can't pronounce his name. Then he continued to their discussion with Christensen. Eventually, Malaves agreed to let Christensen try to raise the money, but they sent Tovar along with him to make sure that Christensen raised the money or to bring them the car the next day. Christensen did not raise the money. The police had interviewed Tovar several days before they interviewed, but Tovar said nothing about the encounter. Tovar had admitted seeing Christensen on Wednesday before his death, and that they, along with a friend of Christensen's for treatment, went into the West Side St. Paul purchased the Devil's Lettuce. After they were finished, Christensen dropped off Tovar at his apartment. Tovar and Christensen also arranged to meet on Friday. Tovar would help Christensen install some sound equipment in his vehicle. Tovar told police that Christensen had returned on Friday, but that they left after they finished installing the stereo equipment. Because of his statements, the police interviewed Tovar again, and this time confronting him with the Malaves statements. Tovar confirmed blah, 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 blah. Let me see. Let's go. Okay. Approximately 45 minutes later, the woman called Tovar Thompson Christensen into the house, his hands bound and his face. Okay, so let's go, I guess, to the part where the caller contacted the police again in 1998 and agreed to meet with them. She was identified by the name and was a dancer at the Lamplighter Lounge in St. Paul. Well, there you go. She sounds like a nice young girl. She told the police that she called them because she had seen several of the men involved in Christensen's murder, including Moses Kinney at the Lamplighter Lounge while she was working. She said that he looked at her funny and that she was afraid that Kinney might harm her because she knew of his involvement in Christensen's death. The caller and other witnesses, the police were now able to identify the police about a birthday party for her boyfriend, Daniel Thompson, which took place on the night Christensen was killed. They indicated the party occurred at blah, blah, blah street. She also told police that Luis LeBron hosted the party and had given permission to use the house by Michael Cleveland, the son of the owner of the house. Richardson and Tovar attended the party. Various guests saw Tovar and Christensen arguing. Thompson finally told Tovar and Christensen to take it outside, and the three of them went out behind the house. Approximately 45 minutes later, the woman caller saw Tovar and Thompson carry Christensen into the house. His hands were bound and his face covered with packing tape. They threw Christensen against the wall and they began to beat and kick him while he lay on the floor. Several other people from the party also began to beat and kick Christensen. Cleveland then saw Christensen throw down a flight of stairs to the basement, knocking over a container of cat litter that was at the top of the stairs. Cleveland, who was in the basement at this time, told Thompson to take Christensen out of the house. Cleveland stated that Christensen was alive at this point, that was bleeding and making a snoring sound. Thompson, LeBron, Tovar, and two others, Robert Medina and Moise Kinney, took Christensen out to where Christensen's car was parked. A short time later, Cleveland saw Tovar come into the kitchen and get a knife. So here you go. A short time later, Cleveland saw Tovar come into the kitchen and get a knife and go back to the car. Tovar turned to the house a little while later, sat down and said, "It's done." Based on the information, police arrested Tovar and several others, including Kinney, for the homicide. The police also arrested. It's possible if what it's based on is just some other, gang members, whatever. One of these people statements, like, let's see a statement. Tovar made an effort of proof into evidence of portions of the statement made by Kinney during Kinney's plea negotiation relating to Kinney's role in Christensen's death. In the statement, Kinney admitted to stabbing Christensen. Subsequently, Kinney's plea negotiation broke down. This is the co-defendant. Kinney also is facing trial for Christensen's murder, refused to testify at Tovar's trial, invoking his right under the Fifth Amendment. Tovar claimed that Kinney's out-of-court statements were dismissed. Okay, so we actually have gone over this. That's why they should have asked him. I don't know. I don't recall if they asked him that last year. Tovar's counsel proceeded 106 will likely prosecution introduce those parts of Kinney's statement. Kinney admitted that his statement stabbed Christensen once in the stomach. This is the one of the key statements that Tovar would admitted as being expelled. What is this? I hate when I get confused with the first names and last names. Alex Tovar. District Court, an excerpts offered by Tovar, but Kinney's entire interview tape because the court believed it was those excerpts were admitted. The rule completeness would not allow the state to offer other parts of the statement that out in fairness. Okay, basically like you need all the evidence or no evidence. Likely without prosecution. Tovar. Those parts, Kinney's statement that directly inculpated Tovar in the Christensen's murder. Kinney admitted in his statement to stabbing Christensen once in the stomach. This is one of the key statements that Tovar would admitted as being exculpatory to Tovar. However, Christensen had been stabbed 3 times, and just before Kinney inculpated himself, he inculpated Tovar by stating that Tovar stabbed Christensen first. So the co-defendant did state that he had stabbed him first, and this is what happened. This is what the court document states that happened, is that the parole hearing that we just saw now, Alex Tovar, went and stabbed him and then went and got the co-defendant, the one who essayed him with the stick, and they finished him off together. They got another knife and finished him off. And this document is basically saying that he wanted to use, anyways, this is just, I know I'm not being helpful right now. I'll drop the links in the description. But whether or not you want to believe he did it or not is Tovar admitted being present when Malevis arrived at 9:18 in the events department. The police informed Tovar that he had told the police that they had instructed Tovar to rough up Christensen if necessary, but they did not tell Tovar to kill him. The police also said that he told them that Tovar knew details of the murder. that were not publicly known. The police told Tovar that he was trying to lay the whole thing off on him. Tovar denied any involvement in any knowledge of Christensen's murder and told police that Christensen had taken him home around midnight. Tovar also repeatedly stated to Christensen's friend that he went to Christensen after the meeting to keep him in his car. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I have a problem with believing that he didn't stab him. I mean, you guys are gonna call me crazy, but I don't know. There's just not. Who knows? Like it seems like it was really messy. There were so many involved. People probably pointed fingers at people, and what were you gonna say? A lot of people got away with it. This guy got 5 years. This dude was charged with this. He got assault third degree, 21 months. I mean, I think anyone who pointed fingers at other people probably got less time, and others, it's I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, but he's definitely institutionalized. He was a Latin king, right? And in prison for so long. Keeping your Christmas decorations up too long was a no-no. This is Lady Holly's fact of the day. There are indeed some weird laws in Maine, and one of the weirdest has to do with Christmas decorations. Can you really be fined for decking the halls beyond Christmas season? Simple answer is no. But some cities in Maine had ordinance in place at one time or another that declared decorations must come down by January 14th. So feel free to keep your Christmas lights and Christmas tree up as long as you want to. So my question for you is, how long do you keep your Christmas tree up? What's the right time to take it down? January 14th? Kind of sounds like a decent time to take it down, right? And with that, I'll let you go.
What was your emotion or your thought when you got the knife and took it outside? What precipitated that maybe not clear decision, but that action of taking a knife?
I think that was just pure panic, especially once I realized what they've done to him in the basement, as far as they took it. It was a panic of, I'm going to jail. I'm involved with the beating. I may not have done what they did in the basement, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I was there. So the panic, just wasn't thinking, just panic, get rid of them, and hopefully get away. But as soon as I got there, I couldn't do it. It was just I've never done that before. I was scared, and I couldn't do it.